G'day, folks. It's the Meeple Monkey here again with another video for you, but nothing to do with Marvel United or anything like that. Something quite different today. I've got the wonderful Andrew Fantasia here from Digital Charcuterie, and we're both here to discuss a TV show called Arcane. And I really hope. Excuse me, my voice is going a little bit. I really hope that this is recording too. Apologies if this is not working very well, but I had a little weird message from what's it called? StreamYard just before. So hopefully this is going out live. We'll see how we go with that. But give us a shout out in the chat or anything if you do join us. I don't see anyone at the moment, but if you do see us, you can tell us if we're live or not.
I just got a notification that you're live on YouTube.
Yes, so, excellent. There we go. Yeah. Oh, look at that. We're using technology within technology. I like it. And yeah, so we're talking about the show Arcane. So I thought we should probably do a little bit of an intro of what Arcane is. Then we might talk about our how we came to it and maybe then what we like about the show, and then we'll do a bit of a deep dive into some of the story arcs and the episode arcs and that sort of thing as well, and see how we go from there, sort of thing. So very, very big picture, I guess. Arcane is sort of set in a it's based on a video game, I believe, or I know, based on a video game, I think, called League of Legends, and this particular show, Arcane, tells, I guess, a few different stories. It tells the story of two cities, I guess, sort of on either side of a river. You know, and a sort of like the differences of class between the upper class and the lower class. It sort of tells that story. It tells a story of two sisters who, through circumstance, go through some things. It tells the story of magic and science and how they sort of interact and mesh together as well. And I guess amongst all of that, it's just lots of really cool sort of personal stories between characters and that sort of thing. But I think that's the big thing you need to know, is it's in this sort of steampunk world, these two sort of cities, upper class and lower class, and then how these different sort of characters interact within that against a backdrop of also a bit of science and sorcery as well. And going any further into that, I guess we start to talk about story beats and spoilers and that sort of thing. So I thought that's probably a good sort of overview sort of thing. And before we get too far into the discussion, well, hello, hi, Sin. He's joined us here. We're having a very non-Marvel United chat today about the show Arcane. And just before we get into it as well, Andrew, you've only watched the first season. You've just caught up with the first season, so we won't be talking about anything season 2. Please avoid spoilers or anything like that in the comments. That would be appreciated.
Yes, please.
And yeah, and we'll go from there, and that way we can have fun, doing some predictions at the end and that sort of thing as well. So yeah, why don't we do you want to talk about Andrew, how you came to the show, and your background with it, your sort of history with it, how familiar you are with it, and the source material?
Sure. I have never played League of Legends. In fact, I don't even think I've seen it played. I couldn't tell you what kind of game it is at all.
Yeah.
I'm actually, contrary to what my background might show, I'm actually very picky when it comes to video games. It's it's a running joke among my friends, because my friends will be like, hey, here's a gift card for PlayStation. And I'm like, great. And then 5 months later, they're like, have you used it yet? I'm like, no, I can't decide what to buy. I'm so picky with games because of how expensive they are that I'm just like, no, it's got to be the right thing. Otherwise, I'll regret buying it.
Yeah.
So I had never played League of Legends at all. And I heard that this show had come out from a bunch of my students, in fact, because I think season 1, if I'm not mistaken, that was like 3 years ago, right?
Yeah, well, it was a while ago. Yeah, I forgot just how long ago it was, but yeah, it was about 3 years ago. That sounds right.
Yeah, I think it was 2021.
Correct us. Yeah, correct us if we're wrong, because here's another disclaimer: we're going to make a lot of mistakes, and be very, very wrong with our information,
Well,
because as much as I don't know about yourself, but I loved the show, which is why I sort of wanted to do a video on my channel that is usually just about board games, about this thing, just because it just made such an impact on me, sort of thing. So I really love it, but can't claim to be an expert. So if we get any of those sort of things wrong about like when it came out or any of that sort of stuff, apologies.
yeah, let us know. And I'm definitely not an expert, so I'll be doing the majority of the wrongdoing. Yeah, it's definitely been a minute, because the one student I remember who brought up saying like, "Oh, I'm a big fan of Arcane," I haven't taught him in ages, so this goes to show how much time has passed.
Yeah,
because
you're
I
able
always
to carbon date it.
yeah, I can count the rings. Because I teach acting, one of the things I ask every group of kids at the beginning of a year is, okay, what are your favorite movies and TV shows?
Right.
So that's how it would come up. And this one guy was like, "Oh, I really like Arcane." And at the time, a lot of the other kids were like, "Yeah, Arcane's awesome." And then I guess this past month, in November, season 2 had dropped one at a time, right? Like a little chunk at least. And I had heard from you and Dave about it, and I had heard from a bunch of my students, and even one of my adult students was like, "Hey, have you watched Arcane?" So I'm like, okay, I need to start seeing what this is about. So I mean, the word implies there's magic, so I already know I'm going into, like, I'm gonna have a good time.
Yeah. And I remember thinking about you too when there were a couple of things. I mean, there were 3 major things I was thinking, especially when season 2 came out and sort of reminded me of it. Because we probably didn't know each other back season 1, right? 2021.
That's right,
yeah. And I just wanted to mention too, I'm going to lose my train of thought here by mentioning this, but I just want to mention to Sin saying that he hasn't seen this. So I see there's 3 people in the chat, but this is for everyone, not just Sin. We're probably, I don't know about you, Andrew, but I'm thinking we're going to get into spoilers, because we're going to talk about some of the things that happen in season 1. So we won't talk about season 2. I'll try my very best not to say anything about season 2. No promises I won't screw up, but we'll see how we go. But if you want to watch season 1 with like going in clean, apologies. And I hate to sort of send people away, but I just don't want you to get caught out and get spoiled here, because we probably will talk about that sort of stuff as well. But season 1 at least. But 3 things I remember just loving it, being like, oh my god, and this season in particular, number 2, I was just like, oh my god, this is so good. But I remember thinking, oh yeah, like I've got to talk to Andrew about this, because your background coming from digital charcuterie, and that channel is not just board gaming, right? But you guys talk a lot about different film media and all that sort of stuff, and I knew your background in acting and that sort of thing, and I thought, oh, I'd love to get your take on this. And I love the stories in this, and I love it so much. And I'm like, is it just me? Am I just enjoying this, or is this, I want to talk to someone who's got some bona fides in the in that world of story crafting and story writing and acting and all that sort of stuff, and what you thought of this as well. So thank you very much for being on and giving us your expert opinion.
Oh, thank you for having me. And I mean, like the thought of a show about magic is like, that's always going to grab me. And just to show how cold I went into this, I didn't even know it was a steampunk story.
Right.
I literally just thought it's gonna have magic in it. That's all I knew. My mind assumed, wizards and swords, because that's kind of my thing. And I'm like, okay, cool, wizards and swords. And then I turn it on and I see some gears and some blimps, and I'm like, oh, this is what I'm in for. Like, that's how little I knew about Arcane.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting too, because so my background is I knew about League of Legends from years and years ago, because my mates that I sort of got into sort of board gaming with pretty sort of like as I was sort of getting out of Warhammer, and like I left the sort of Games Workshop stores and that sort of thing, and I sort of reconnected with some old friends from school and their sort of group of friends as well. we used to hang out and play a lot of video games, or we'd go to the movies and this and that. And one of my mates, he's got this theater room. That was awesome. We'd go around, and sometimes we'd just go into the theater room and we'd watch like movies, or play video games, Halo and that sort of stuff. And at a certain point, though, they started, and they were always into this. They played their World of Warcraft and all that sort of stuff, which I never really played those online games, right? But they started playing League of Legends. But then they also then they got into this thing that this was the first time I'd ever heard of this, seen this, and and this was a sort of an awakening about YouTube, right, as well, that people would you could make a whole channel about just recording your plays of playing a video game, and then people would watch that, and these guys would go, oh, what do we want to do tonight? Let's play board games, or let's we were a rowdy crew, right? let's go to the movies, let's go, go out to the movies or whatever. But a lot of they started being like, oh no, let's just hang out and sit and watch League of Legends on YouTube. And I was just like, oh, this is lame. And I was just like, oh, I'll see you guys. I'm gonna go because I don't want to sit around and watch League
other people play.
Yeah, so I was like lame. And now I have a YouTube channel solely based on people watching me play a board game, which is probably even more like my previous self would have been mind blown by who would do this. But so thank you all those people that have an interest in watching me play board games. But yeah, but but League of Legends was the game that they were interested in watching and that sort of thing, and so I knew it from that. But from just watching that, I thought it was like you said, magic. Yeah, the irony. I thought it was. I just thought it was mad. I never, because it's the game itself. You sort of have that. You control these champions, and they run around this map. It's a bit like those those war games where the different soldiers get sent out at each other, like Command and Conquer and that sort of stuff. It's that sort of screen, top-down view. You have this sort of map, and the armies are marching at each other, sort of thing. But instead of controlling armies and building bits and pieces, you pretty much just control a single character who runs around battling each other. So I guess it's more like World of Warcraft in that sense, where you've got these sort of fantasy characters running around battling each other, but it's usually, I think, maybe teams of 3 on these maps, and there's all these little soldiers that get sort of just automatically sent out that you're fighting off, but you're also fighting the champions from time to time every time you respawn and stuff. And it's kind of like an area control map thing, I think, where you got to take over each other's bases. And apologies again to all the League of Legends fans. That's just my, from a distance, my look at it I don't want to look at that. And I was like, what's going on in there? Yeah, okay, I don't think I want to play that. Yeah, but I had enough of a look at it to get that sort of a sense. So apologies if anyone wants to put a better description of what the game's like in the comments. Feel free to do that. I think they're called MOBA games, multi-online. I'm going to say battle arena, something like that. Essentially, it's just teams of and the theme, I think, was. I just thought it was magic or whatever. But I think the theme was these champions are summoned, a bit like Magic the Gathering or whatever, to this magical battle world, and they fight or whatever, and they've all got cool abilities and stuff. But what was interesting is that this is what I sort of think I know about it now, is that it was just this game, with these characters. They just came up with cool characters with cool powers, and they'd fight. But there wasn't much to it, not much of a background to it. And I think it's been going for years, though, right? It's very popular. And I think a while ago they sort of came in or something, and they started sort of readdressing the background and giving more of an actual story to the world and the characters, I think. Now, I don't know if that's as a consequence of Arcane, or Arcane was made available because that started happening, and so they had this richer world to come from. But one of the things that impresses me so much about this show, I just love the world building and the story and everything like that. And it comes from this game that originally I don't think had a lot of that. It was just these random characters that just kind of you'd pit together, and there wasn't much rhyme or reason for it, sort of thing. But I love what they've done story-wise with this sort of thing. So that's kind of what I sort of that's my background. That's how I sort of knew it was from this sort of thing. And I remember when the show first popped up on Netflix years ago, and it was like Arcane. I was like, oh, this looks interesting with the art and all that sort of stuff. And I was again surprised by the steampunk. I was like, oh, well, who knew? I didn't realize that stuff was steampunk. But I didn't really know much about steampunk then anyway, and I don't really know much about it now either. But I was like, oh. And then I saw the little tagline underneath, League of Legends, and I was like, ugh. But there was nothing else on, right? It was one of those times where like there were no other shows on or anything that I was watching at the time. I was like, oh well, okay, I may as well watch it. And I was just like, oh damn! Don't tell my friends who I was really snooty about it that I really like this sort of thing. So the moral of the story is the League of Legends fans were right, and there's some cool characters and it's a cool world, and it's really good. So yeah, that's I guess that's our background to the show sort of thing. Real time. Oh, there you go. That's another way. Did I get it right? Multiplayer online battle arena. That's what I said, wasn't it?
Yep. Yeah, I think so.
Awesome. Good
It
job.
sounds like if you mix World of Warcraft with like Dynasty Warriors. That's the vibe I'm getting from how you described it.
Okay. Yeah. So World of Warcraft definitely, and I can see where the Dynasty Warriors, which is, I mean, we've got to do another show about Dynasty Warriors, or Dynasty Warriors, because I love that stuff too. But Sin said real-time strategy, which I think is what I was trying to describe when I was talking about those games with the soldiers.
Yeah, like Civilization and things like that.
Civilization. So that's I think what I'm sort of was trying to describe more. So yeah, so when I was saying the little soldiers coming at you, they're like that size, and that whole thing of like where they kind of battle each. Yeah, it's that sort of feel more than Dynasty Warriors or Dynasty Warriors. So
got it.
Yeah. So yeah, but so that's the world sort of thing. And I guess yeah, I think what I'd like to do is maybe we'll talk about what we like. So I've already sort of said we just really love the characters and this sort of thing. And I want to mention I was worried. I've been up all night, like I was like jotting down notes and things like that. And I was really worried about like, I've got to make sure I mention this, and I've got to make sure I mention that. And I think that I've got to just relax, because I'm not going to be able to sum up everything that I think about this show. I've got so many thoughts and things going around in my head about this show that I'll just try and remember what I remember, and especially I'm hoping you'll jog my memory with things that you've picked out and that sort of stuff. And
right.
I'll do my best not to talk over the top of you or make my turn and then go, oh, you mentioned this and that sort of thing. And feel free, if you're in the comments and you've seen this show as well, and you want to give your thoughts and that sort of thing as well, without any season 2 spoilers, that'd be great too. So Pokemon United is the same genre. Pokemon United is the same genre.
I didn't know.
Is there a Pokemon Unite? Is that
Simon? What are you doing?
Yeah. But the other thing I wanted to say was apologies, because I hope I did a pretty good job explaining the show, because I mentioned this to a mate. He was asking, what are you doing on the weekend? And I said, this is a guy at work, and he said, he said, what are you doing on the weekend? And I said, oh, I'm actually gonna do a YouTube clip, because he knows I do the YouTube stuff, and I'm gonna have a chat about this TV show that I've watched and I'm really excited about and stuff. And he's like, oh, okay, what's it about? And I started giving my spiel, and about a minute into it, he stops me and he goes, I hope you polish up this because you lost me almost straight away. You're like, I'm not interested in the show at all. So I think from your description, I was like, oh damn. So I've really got to try and keep it tight, sort of thing. So apologies.
I feel you, my friend. The amount of times I have been asked, hey Andrew, what's your book about? You'd think I would have just some kind of coherent response, but I end up just sounding like a madman. I'm just like, oh, wizard.
Wait. My magic powers are failing me. I'm trying to hold my camera. There we go. Oh man. I can't.
I wrote an invisible book.
There you go, invisible book. This is the special edition one. Yeah, good. Wow, that was a fail with the carrot. I couldn't get that to work at all. But yeah, no, it's so what did I say? Oh, let me have a look at my notes here. So, but I think that's the thing. It's the main takeaway from me is it's just a show that I keep thinking about. Like I just every time I watched an episode, I'd just be thinking about it at night, sort of thing, and all through the week. It's one of those shows where the themes are so good and rich, and the memorable moments are so good that you just find yourself coming back to it and daydreaming and thinking about it. And yeah, I really liked it. And it's another show where I really like all of the characters. Sometimes there's shows where you hate all of the characters. Like, you might still like the show, but like, they're just I really like all of the characters in this one, sort of thing. So yeah, it's really good.
Nice.
What about yourself? What was your overall impression, sort of thing, of the show?
My first impression that like midway through episode 1, and then it lasted all the way, like all 9 episodes, was just, damn, this is beautiful to look at.
Yeah, right.
Animation wise, like, I was floored. And then, like, I was looking up the studio. I'm like, I've never seen anything these people have done before. So it's this new, to me at least, studio, and they're blowing me away every episode with just how gorgeous everything is. And I kept thinking, and I'm going to do something that I don't normally do, because I hate to be one of those people who compliments one thing by putting down something else. I hate being that guy, and I don't normally do it, but I'm going to do it right now.
All right.
Just to drive home. So here's this company that I've never heard of before making Arcane, and it's like some of the most beautiful animation I've seen in years. And just last year, this little company called Disney made a movie called Wish that looks like sludge, and I'm like, how did that happen? Like, what a discrepancy here. So the fact that these people, I forget what they're called, who made Arcane, but the fact that they made it look as good as it does, to me, very few things in the modern age justify how long we have to wait for TV seasons now, but this is one of them. The fact that it took 3 years, I'm like, considering what you're putting on screen and showing me, take 3 years if that's the case, because that looks great.
Yeah, and I think I could be getting this wrong. I think Riot Studios are the team that I don't know. Riot Studios, I think, are the team that made this. Again, let us know in the comments if you know. I'm not sure if Riot Studios are also the studio that are behind League of Legends, or if that's who they are and someone else made this show, sort of thing. But one of the things I know about Riot Studios, or at least I think that's who I'm thinking of, is the team behind League of Legends. They're sort of kind of got a bit of a reputation now for doing this, where they just, whatever they try their hand at, they make these things that are almost like a love letter to the fans, and they just pull out all the stops, and somehow, I guess because they're doing it out of that passion, it's very cynical to say, are they really, or are they, but because they're behind this. In the world of board gaming, there's a game that's like a grail game for a lot of people called, I think, Mechs and Minions, which is based on League of Legends, and it's this game that has beautiful production quality. Like it's a programming game where you send these little bots out fighting different things and stuff like that. I think it's co-op, but it's this beautifully constructed. I think they're painted models of these like little cool characters and all the bad guys and stuff. And the game, it's just a beautiful game, and people sort of rave about it. But it's also they made it sort of like super cheap at the time for what it was. It was basically just a thank you to the fans. They said, we're going to just make this immaculate board game, put it out there, and it's just like, we're going to probably make it at a loss or whatever, because it's so good, but for such a good quality price, a good value price, that they put it out there. And the problem is that that's not sustainable, so they just made this limited run of it. So now it's this like impossible to find game sort of thing. And they've made some other really interesting abstract game that came out. I don't think it made much of a splash, but just recently sort of thing. But my mate was really into it, sort of thing. Yeah, but they make these really. So they're this studio that makes this, award-winning video game thing, but they delve into these other little areas and make these really nice products. And I think that's what happened here. I think they are largely responsible. I think the studio behind League of Legends is very much part of the team that made this, and I think that's how they were able to sort of like get it so, because they had this clear vision, and I don't think it's been sort of tainted by lots of different hands coming in, I guess, is my understanding of it, sort of thing. But boy, oh boy, you're right with that just the art. And I just want to give a shout out to Tater Tios, I think it is. Says, and hopefully we get some nice quality comments like this too that can counteract my rambling and stuff. But my shorthand when describing it is saying it is a commentary on the cycles of violence, how systemic institutional violence is reflected in the dysfunctions of the home. So there you go. Nice. I'm going to just say some things like I like the art, and then we'll come back to hopefully Tater Tios, if you can insert some really nuanced takes as well, but that'll help balance out the critiques.
Yeah, keep everything in the comments nice and profound so we don't have to do the work.
But no, it's like that probably is a much more distilled way of like getting across like what I love about it. It's like that initial thing, like you said, when you come into it, that's the first thing you see, right? Is the art, and just I don't even know how to describe it's like a painting. It's like a beautiful painting over the top of 3D models, or you know what I mean? Like it's really cool. It's it's like and you think how far we've come from Toy Story, right? Where it was like that was a mind blowing, the 3D world of Toy Story. And now, like what they're able to do, and it's been super expensive. I think they say it's like, by some metrics, the most expensive animation ever made, and all that sort of stuff as well.
Whoa,
but
really?
You can see you can see where that the money hasn't been wasted. You know what I mean? It's like,
the money's all there on screen.
I mean, I mean, you could argue that money making a cartoon is not. I guess the wasted is like, okay, how could it be better spent? But if you're wanting to get profound art out there, this is pretty good. I think this is I'm happy that the money was spent. So so good. And so that was your initial sort of impression, I guess, sort of thing. And then I guess maybe let's get into, and we can talk about our impressions as we go into it. Let's get into the arcs and that sort of thing as well. So I think with and that's something I really liked about it as well is I don't like I'm impatient, so I don't like it when they strip it out one episode at a time. So, but 3 episodes, it was good. I was like, okay, yeah, I can handle 3, and then 3 I can binge a little bit and go from there. But just that first arc, that is just such a impactful. I can't remember a show or a story or anything like this in such a long time making such a big impact on me. Like, I think about those characters and that world that they were in and what life was like for them and how things could have been like so much. And even before, like, it was this thing that was just ever since that first season. And, I must admit, I'd sort of forgotten a lot of the things and stuff since, when coming back into season 2 and seeing it, I was like, oh yeah, that's right, this was going on. Oh, that's right, this was going on. But that crux of that first 3 episodes, that was all like fresh. I was like, it just has stayed with me, and that little family dynamic of that little group of them, that stayed with me. But a bigger picture, like the world building, I think like I think one of the first things I said was like, this is the story of 2 cities, right? And in this, and the class, the divide between them and that sort of thing, that was immediately like just that world they set up, so evocative. And so I guess it's like you said, like we're all used to sort of fantasy. And I guess steampunk, if you're into steampunk, you've probably a lot more familiar with it and seek it out and find it. But I feel like steampunk isn't something that's been necessarily mined a lot in the general media space. You know what I mean? I think there's a lot of people who are, more familiar with the sci-fi tropes and the fantasy tropes. I think this steampunk is an interesting world to sort of come into. And so that was really good. This also it introduces us to everything, right? Like the soundtrack, like just the getting into the songs and stuff as action happens and stuff like that. It's just like, whoa, this is really cool. And I think it's this these 3 episodes like really set up. They give us they spend 3 whole episodes with these kids before the time skip, before getting into like, I guess, the story proper, right? So it really spends its time. We become invested with these characters and their world, and that's I think what makes it so impactful. It's not like, okay, this all happened in the first episode.
Right.
It's like they took 3 episodes for us to really feel comfortable in this world, get to know them, get to know their mentors and that sort of thing. And boy, oh boy, yeah. Well, like, and starting on that bridge, and the confusion and the smoke and this and that, it sets up that, okay, there's a divide. It sets up, oh, okay, in amongst all the chaos and the confusion and the dirt and the grime and stuff, this is going to be, when we see those kids, it's like, okay, this is kind of going to be their story, sort of thing. And mate, it's just so good, so good. The visual of her life literally burning, and like so many visual metaphors throughout this thing, and hopefully we can sort of touch on them as we go through. But amazing. Like, what about yourself, Andrew? Like, what are some of the things that stood out to you with these first 3 episodes?
Well, that first arc, I mean, it hit me, I think, in all the ways the writers wanted the audience to be hit. Like, I fell for their lovely trick, just hook, line, and sinker. Especially because I had no idea of the way Netflix distributed this. So to somebody who was watching it when it was new, they kind of had that thought a little bit of like, hey, I'm getting 3 episodes now and then the rest later. So you kind of expect it to end on a little bit of something to keep you interested. Whereas I just thought, okay, it's Netflix. Usually they just release everything at once. So I went in thinking, okay, I'm on episode 3 of 9, whatever. It's just another, oh my God. And then like, it really just turned things around. And it's just exquisite the way that it played with our expectations. We've become so used, and unfortunately, but in today's day and age with fiction, we become so used to the idea of characters having plot armor and just kind of, death being such a flippant thing, and people coming back or like, oh no, it's okay, I pulled the thing out of my heart and I'm okay now. Just so many cheap ways to undo what could be a really satisfying character death. And like you said, we have these 3 full episodes with this group of essentially steampunk Goonies, and getting to know them and love them and their quirks and the way they work off of Vander as a father figure and all of that, their setup. And then to take that and have us just enough time to get attached to them, and then throw that loop in where Powder throws that bomb, and that bomb is literally causing way more damage than like it's even a small thing. It's just a little ball, and we think, oh, what's that going to do, right? That's going to knock the monster over, whatever. And not only does it help take care of the villain threat, but then it goes above and beyond to a place Powder didn't want it to go. And I'm there in the headspace of, oh, these kids are fine because people don't kill characters like they used to. But then by the time that episode was on its last couple of minutes, I'm looking at the 2 boys in the group and I'm like, oh, they're like dead. We're going there. All right. And that's when I'm like, the hook grabbed me and I'm like, okay, I see what's happening here. And I mean, not to brag, but I had the luxury of being able to go right to episode 4 after that, which I'm sure most people didn't get. So it was cool to see that time jump happen pretty instantaneously. When I don't know how it felt for you, but with the time jump being an instant, just click next episode, and then all of a sudden it's 12 years later or whatever, it really tugged at the gut in a tragic way, because it's like in the blink of an eye, those kids' childhoods are gone. Like I didn't have time to stew on it. I was just like, okay, next. And then all of a sudden they're grown up and I'm like, oh, wow, this is, it's gone. Like now they're in a worse place. So experiencing it that way was a really, really interesting sort of like, there was no time for a palate cleanse.
Yeah,
and it turned it into something really, really cool. And I wonder if people who watched it after the fact, like me, feel the same way.
Yeah, and I'm trying to remember how. I'm trying to remember when I first watched it. How like did I watch it late enough that a few of the episodes were out and I was able to get past it? I don't think so. I think I watched it as it came out, so I probably had to wait that week or whatever it was between 3 and that number 4 sort of thing. But yeah, but it was also it's like and like Tater Tios is saying, I still get shivers watching the scene where Vi calls Powder a jinx, and that's another thing too. As you watch this season, and as you get into season 2 and all that sort of stuff, and again, won't say anything about that, but like even just contained within season 1, if you going back, because I've been watching it a few times because my wife has got into it now, so like I sort of started watching season 1 again, and then she started watching, so I got to go back and watch, so I just keep watching and watching, and like it's still. It's one of those great shows as well where like so much there's little bits like so much things like still hit hard or hit harder the second time because because of what is coming and this and that. And so yeah, going back and seeing Vi's relationship with Jinx or Powder, and just the little things and those little conversations, where she calls her a Jinx and where those things are just like it pulls at the heart, like it just gets you so good, in good ways and bad ways, that like the tragic stuff is so tragic, and the the euphoria and the I guess like the cathartic moments are so I guess they're few and far between, but like they're those moments are so like rousing and stirring and stuff as well. Like so good. And just want to get back to it cuts to shots to, and then it shoots to Powder, just a wreck on the ground, and just so many things are just the visuals. But it's not just the visuals, right? It's the visuals help sell everything, and the visuals just make it so enjoyable to watch. It's like a masterpiece. But this would not be like, there's so many shows that have great visuals, and maybe I could still say this one kind of, for me, kind of stands head and shoulders above a lot of stuff. But like this just, it's the storytelling, it's the moments, it's even just like the animation of the faces, like the expressions, like the real raw emotions on them, the way they, when they're crying, it's like ugly crying, and it's so, and beautiful shots, and and tying it in with the music. I'm not someone who, I think I've got a bit of a tin ear and stuff like that, but like, so I wish I could talk better about this. Like I'm talking really good about all the other stuff, but the way that the music helps bring the whole thing together as well, and the soundtrack, and the way that they, just so many iconic moments. And to skip forward a little bit, that scene where I think Jinx fires the big plume of blue smoke, the flare or whatever, to get Vi to come back or whatever, and just just all little moments like that, just so good. Sin, it's on Netflix, I believe. Sin's asking where you can watch. I think Netflix, and I like that comment. It's a Greek tragedy. Yeah, it's like and like fate touches them all. Like that's the other thing. This, because we've only really just been talking about like Vi and Jinx and the kids, the Goonies, right, and Vander and that sort of thing. And but I think we've mentioned his name once, right? And what a impactful character he and Silco are on the whole. Like they are just their shadow, or their presence is felt, like, and it's just, and the way it just keeps bringing you back, and the impact that third episode has with that, it's like so amazing. But like we haven't even really talked about like Jace and Victor, those guys, we have, and they're all introduced in these first 3 episodes, sort of, right? And that's what's so good about this. Like these first 3 episodes, they set up. They set up the Arcane and the Hex tech, like, okay, this is going to be a thing. They set up that we get to also delve into the halls of power, and the backroom deals and that sort of stuff as well, the politics of it all. It sets up the divide between the classes and the underworld and that sort of thing. but really it's that hook of that family unit, I think, is the main thing from this one. But those characters that also get introduced, I love how this show, like a Greek tragedy, like everything's kind of related, and there's so many things where you go, oh well, it all stemmed from this, like if this, so like, because the big thing, right, Powder's that little bomb, right, and it's it's so brilliant how it's kind of like they have it clap and then boom and you see the effect, and then clap and then boom you see the bigger effect, and then it's like it's rippling out with like how impactful this moment is. And it's so like the tragedy talking about tragedy of like them, the bastards, showing us that the kid gets through the wall, and then showing us that the kid frees frees Vander, and showing us that like she closes the door and she's fought off all those goonies, and she, they made it, right. They were, every part of that they were in trouble with, they got through, and then just like how many different ways that little moment in time can like just destroy their lives. And it's so good. But like that, that moment is so impactful, and you can look back and what would have happened here and what would and you're just thinking, if only, right? And what a brilliant moment to like, their relationship was so strong, but it's the perfect, it's so understandable and relatable that is the break, and that's the one thing that could have caused her to, like, I think, slap her sister and call her a jinx and like, turn her back on her. And that kind of like, because there's so many, and this might be blasphemy, I have never been a fan of, in Star Wars, Darth Vader's turn, right? Like I never bought it. It just didn't sell it to me, like that movie, even just the first couple of movies leading to it. But I think they really did all the groundwork, I guess, in the third movie. And you could argue that, okay, well, Clone Wars fixes it up, right? They have a lot more backstory, but I feel like Clone Wars makes it even harder for me to believe that character would do what he did in the third movie,
right, based
on the plot that you get given with that, with Padme, and he's got visions of her getting sick or something. I forget what it is, right? But I just never believed that character would go all of a sudden. It just smacked too much of like, Jedi evilness is just automatically just transforms his character altogether, right? Like I didn't see him killing those kids, right? That's a bridge too far. I never bought it. But in this, I buy that moment of her abandoning Powder in that moment, like realizing that she has, like, her action has killed her father, has killed her friends, like that's a thing I can buy, that she turns on her sister at that point, or abandons her or whatever, even though it's kind of like a snap and it's a momentary thing and she kind of almost immediately regrets it and stuff. Like that's what I mean about like the storytelling. It's so believable. It just brings it all together. And I was going somewhere with this and I've completely forgotten where I was going as well. I think I was just going to say that, everything touches it. Like going back to Tater Tio's point, that we get to see, there are other points, other things that happen, other things that characters are doing that also lead, you could argue, well, actually, that's not the thing that would have, you got to think about, well, what about Little Man, like Echo? And if he hadn't have like ripped off Jace and sent the kids on that mission, then they wouldn't have found the stuff, the little blue balls or whatever and all that sort of stuff. So there's so many moments and stuff that's crazy in that first one. So Sin Arcane, he's trying to sell me on I don't know, I just never bought it. I never bought the vision, like it just didn't.
As much as I love Star Wars, I agree, like that movie, it really felt like he was turning into Vader because the runtime was almost up and they needed to get him in the costume.
I don't know, like maybe if you've, I think I'm not as heavily into that. I don't know all the nuance of other stuff, but for me, it never sold it sort of thing.
Yeah, the groundwork is in that trilogy, but they definitely needed to take more time with it. And there's a great unused story. Yeah, that's true. They're not totally rational all the time. That's true. There's a great unused story that they almost went with Darth Vader. And I don't know why George Lucas scrapped the idea, but initially the plan was throughout that trilogy, there would be a bit of a love triangle between him, Obi-Wan, and Padme. And part of the turning is him thinking that Obi-Wan and Padme actually like hooked up and betrayed him, and like falsely believing that. And then there was some kind of thing where when Padme goes to meet him and she's like, "What are you doing?" She's got a knife behind her back because she's terrified. And when he sees that, he freaks out and he's like, "What?" And it just a perfect storm of just misunderstanding. And I guess I don't know why Lucas didn't go with that, but when you think of what could have been, it's like, man, that would be, the parallel universe version of that trilogy is out there somewhere, and I wish I could see it.
Yeah.
Even though I love what we got, because I'll never not love Star Wars.
Yeah. And I didn't mean that to be a massive diss on the series or anything like that. I just like that's a moment that for me, like, it just, and because we grew up like, well, not all of us, but like, we grew up watching the Star Wars movie, like the three that we had, right? And you knew the backstory, and you were told this backstory, and you knew that he turned, sort of thing. So like I guess the expectations were set up real high. It's like, how are you going to show us that this guy turns? And it just didn't land, sort of thing. But well, let's get back to Arcane. And I really speaking of, so let's talk about some things that are less tragic. One of the things I love, just a little moment in I love all the little character moments and stuff. I love when Vi's talking to Milo and she says, like, "Look at this face. See this face? This face will always mean it's time to shut up," or whatever. Like, just like the little bits of like humor and stuff in the show all throughout, like that. Like, I know she's a pretty obvious sort of one that's sort of meant to be a favorite protagonist sort of thing, but I think it's hard to pick a favorite, but I think Vi is probably still my favorite. I really like her character. That's one of my favorite sort of moments there. And I love, oh man, that fight in that third episode where she goes on the bridge and like this kid, that's what I love about her character. She's just a kid, but like just boxes. That's her special power. She can box people into oblivion. That was such a cool, heroic moment of hers. Like, she gets through all these big grown-ups and stuff. That was really cool. I really liked that. So, and then, I mean, we haven't really talked about like, Jace. And what that's a really cool. I loved that second episode starts with that sort of his backstory there with the meeting that wizard sort of thing, and getting rescued in the cold. It was such just a mysterious thing and so different to what we'd seen already in the show. It really opened up the world of the show. It's like, this is going to be more than about just this sort of thing. So that I really liked that. I liked that as the show goes on, it's sort of like it's able to create this bigger story, but brilliantly sort of like keeps these characters grounded, keeps the central things going, and then just sort of like has them meet, interact with each other and run into each other in fun ways and that sort of thing. In most cases, it lands really well with that sort of thing. I thought that was good. The second arc, like you said, it's sort of time skip. That's that was a really cool thing as well to show. I like how the time skip, it's a really brilliant thing too. Like, they show the time skip. So you've just gone through this devastating, you just like, your heart is wrenched out and you're waiting. oh, like what's the, you might be, praying your hope because you're used to shows where they, they go, oh, by the way, he's magically come back to life. Whatever. You're waiting to see the aftermath and the outcome of this stuff, and then the first thing they show is that dawn, beautiful, up in Piltover, everything's gilded and golden, and this brilliant dawn rising, and like happy progress day, and like look at all the good that's happened, and the big takeaway from that previous arc is that everyone's life is better and everything's beautiful and it's all perfect. Like that's the opening kind of the show, and it's just like, what do you mean? It's like, no, things aren't all perfect. Like everyone, they just lost their whole family, but it's like it shows that sort of, again, it kind of like builds on that divide. Like so good. Like it just, what a great way to sort of like switch things on you and make you think, oh yeah, like things really have gone good for a lot of people, and it's just so unfair. And it's like, but yeah, I really like that. And then it this arc then sort of really opens up those other stories. It really then sort of sells you on, okay, like the political intrigue and the melding of science and technology, and that all becomes much bigger and stuff as well. But what did you think of these episodes?
Yeah, this was a very cool time jump. Again, totally floored me. I wasn't expecting it, and then to get that happening. And what's cool is that it didn't just spell out a time jump with text. It didn't just say 10 years later, whatever. It kind of made me work for it, and I appreciated that, because I'm watching and they're talking about Progress Day, and I'm like, I think we've moved ahead a long time. And it took a minute for me to see, because you don't see Vi and Powder right away, so you don't know they've grown up. And Jace kind of looks the same. So you look at him and you're like, I can't tell if he's older. But then as they start talking about his accomplishments, and you realize before he was just a nobody trying to work with magic, then you're like, oh, and I love that. I love that they didn't just spell it out, and they let you kind of understand what was happening based on the visuals and based on what was going on. But this next arc was a lot of fun. It got into a lot of the political stuff, which again, it's a new facet that I wasn't expecting, because so far what we saw in 1 to 3 was just a very even though Jace was in it, it was sort of laser focused on this uprising, this rebellion coming from the lower city, and dealing with these corrupt cops, these enforcers and whatnot. So I'm like, okay, they're going up against the fascist government, cool. And then all of a sudden in arc number 2, it gets very Game of Thronesy. There's a lot of shady stuff happening up there in that Gilded Tower. And I thought it didn't end up quite going this way, but I thought we were going to get the sort of arc with Jace where there's this really good old Andy Griffith movie called A Face in the Crowd, where he's like, I think he's like a wandering, just kind of like a homeless person, or he's like in a drunk tank as like a prisoner or something, and he's just like the sweetest guy, but he just lives this lowly existence, and he just has a guitar and he plays the guitar really well. And he gets discovered by like a radio show, and he becomes the America's biggest country singer. And he goes from being like America's sweetheart to being like this terrible tyrant of a man. And you track that happening. You're like, oh my God, like at the beginning of this movie, I was rooting for this dude, and now he's a monster. And I thought that we're going the same way with Jace. Particularly when he's supposed to make his announcement on Progress Day, and you can see Victor waiting backstage, like, let's do this. And then Jace just kind of brushes it off. I really got the sense that they were going in that direction of like, he's partners with Victor, but then he's going to start doing things his own way and taking the glory. And then he's going to start sleeping with that senator, and he's just going to go off and be really self-serving. And he turned from that eventually. He sort of he certainly heads in that direction for a little while, doesn't he? So I thought we were looking at the origin of our big bad when I was watching Jace. I thought we're watching Palpatine become Palpatine.
Yeah.
So the fact that he didn't, again, it threw me for a loop. It took my expectations and said, nope, try again. So now I'm literally like, to me, Jace is the biggest question mark. Like, I don't know what they're going to do with his story. I couldn't even begin to predict what they might do with his story.
Yeah. And I guess you could argue that like a lot of the things that are a consequence in that first season of his actions like are, you know, bad consequences and things. So like in that sense, he is sort of a catalyst for a lot of you know, bad things that happen. He through his kind of like blundering sort of way that he sort of goes through this new world that he finds himself in, sort of thing. But yeah, he, like, you know, the actual core of him, they sort of like bring back. He doesn't go that, you know, villain sort of route, sort of thing. And I like Tato Tios is saying, he said, yeah, he's like the typical sheltered do-gooder who knows nothing about true suffering, but he gets radicalized and he's kind of like struggling to. And it all happens kind of pretty fast too, doesn't it? Sort of thing. Like he gets elected to senator or something, and then he's, you know, 2 days, and then he's like, the next day he's like, I'm stamping out all crime, and then he's like, the next day he's like, I'm gonna start doing backroom deals, and, you know, he's like, so. But yeah, you're right. Like, it's an interesting one, and then yeah, like I can see where you're at with season 1. Yeah, it's like the real sort of like, okay, what is his part in the story going to be, apart from just being a bit of a catalyst with, you know, like inventing the magic and, you know, making it possible for some of these like magic effects that happen, you know, like for example, like he's the one that brought the blue beads to town or whatever they were, the hex balls or whatever, and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, what actually is he going to do that's like, you know, very what's the word, like, you know, driving things forward, like proactively, sort of thing, you know, what's he, so
yeah, like, has he already served most of his
story
purpose
arc?
or, and I'm trying to remember this 3
he's
episode
not in
arc.
it at all. In season 2, he's just no, I'm only joking.
Yeah, he just goes on vacation. In this 3 episode arc, I can't remember how this one ends. Does this one end with the bridge explosion, or does it end with something else?
I think that happens. I want to say that might happen. You guys correct me. I think it happens right at the beginning of the next arc. I think this one ends with Vi and Jinx kind of reuniting at last and fighting off, like, I can't remember if they fight off the firelights or the thingies, but that touches on some stuff as well, like a major theme of this, like, even though we see that underworld in the first one, this one we get to see the underworld. Okay, this is the consequence of essentially Silco being victorious, right? In that first arc, we see the underworld that he's kind of built. If I'm not mistaken, like we get to spend a lot of time with Silco, his gang, seeing how they're running things, what that's meant for the underworld. Of course, we see that Jinx is with him now, and that sort of thing as well. We see that Shimmer, that drug sort of thing, has become like sort of permeated throughout the society down there and that sort of thing as well.
Yeah, it's a bit of an epidemic down there now. Like, there's like almost what do you call, like, shanty towns of just people addicted to Shimmer.
Yeah. And it's interesting, like the shanty town. It's like it's one of those things I probably haven't paid enough attention to. Is like, you see all these people, they're almost like lepers and they're really sick and stuff. And I'm like, are they like that as a result of the Shimmer, like the Shimmer addiction, or are they like that as a result of all the pollution, the toxins that they're living in, and the Shimmer is almost like just kind of like keeping them doped up? And I've sort of missed that. Like, I can't really remember what that what the relationship there is between those things. The other thing I want to mention here, this is put my hand up, and I'm still really confused about, and I apologize, this might sound really silly, and maybe you've got a better understanding of it, but like, okay, so I get the idea, okay, it's the tale of two cities, right? And there's this bridge that divides them, and Piltover's the bridge up on the hill, and I think it's Zorn is the bridge across the river. But like, what I'm confused about is, okay, is Zorn like, because then like there's the Undercity, right? But is like, they talk about the lanes and the fissures. Are the lanes and the fissures the same thing? Is the Undercity like, where is that? Is that like underneath Zorn, or is it in the ravine down underneath the bridge? Like the actual geography of it, like I understand, okay, there's the rich people living up the top and the poor people living underground, but like, what's this whole city on the other side that we keep seeing? And sometimes we see them on the other side and they can see the sky and stuff. So is it like, is there like, Zorn is like this poorer city on the other side of the river, and then there's like this whole other crime world underneath that city? Or like, I'm a little bit wishy-washy on the
Yeah, same.
someone who loves the show and watches it over and over again. I still am a bit like, okay, where exactly is the like, you know, like I get the impression, you know, like it's like Warhammer 40,000, these hive cities with like just building built upon building built upon building, like, and so they're just so far down underneath at the bottom levels. That's why there's no light getting there. Like, is that the idea that this, or is it? Yeah, I'm just not exactly sure where they are. And I know lanes is a thing from the video game, like the idea that on these maps, I think it's a bit of an in-joke reference, like on these maps they have, like, you have your 2 home bases, and then you can go the top lane, which is like a path at the top, or the mid lane, or the bottom lane. And it's kind of like, oh, you know, if you're playing the game and you're talking to your friends and strategizing, you might say, like, my guy's a tank, I'm going to go top lane and block the top lane, sort of thing. So I think when they keep talking about, oh, we're in the lanes and stuff like that, I think that's I could be getting this wrong, but my understanding is that that's a bit of a joke, you know, because the lanes is like language in the video game. Also, it makes sense because, right, they're down in the back alleys and the lanes and stuff like that. But,
right. Yeah, I felt the same way. Like, it was, I guess, just the way they animated everything, where every time you see Piltover, it's a beautiful sunny scape, and then whenever you see Zorn, it's dark and it's grimy, and there's, you know, if there is sky, it's overcast. It looked like, just based on the type of character Silco was and the type of like establishing shots we would see, I think Zorn is not necessarily subterranean, but I feel like it's very like the worst neighborhoods in Industrial Revolution London, where the sky is just, there's chimneys belching things out of factories, because they called Zorn. Yeah, they called Zorn an industrialist at one time. So I'm like, okay, so this guy probably owns factories. He's probably getting like orphans to work in them. So it seems like that kind of place, like all the pollution, everything that the city needs to operate, but is the worst parts of it, is stuck there.
Yeah. So, I mean, you get, you know, it's, I think we've got a general idea of like, okay, you know, the top clean part and the bottom, but I'm always just a bit like, yeah, like head scratching sometimes. But I think we've got our understanding of it is enough to get, you know, the basic metaphor of it. I think that's good. And Tater Teos is sort of giving us his. I'm glad that he or she is not 100% sure. He's saying maybe in the mines as well, because there are mines and stuff as well.
Right.
I'm glad, because they've got a really good handle on this, and they've got some great ideas, and I'm glad that they are not 100% sure of the topography.
Yeah,
makes me feel a bit better too.
It's like if Gotham and Metropolis were the same city, and we just keep turning the camera.
Yeah. Because it's, you know, that there's that bit where in this arc, when Caitlin and Vi, and Caitlin's someone I don't think we've mentioned yet as well, but Caitlin and Vi go together on that mission to go explore and investigate who's behind the bombings, and to look for Jinx. You see that shot where there's that little tram line that's almost like that railway in Hong Kong or whatever, and it looks like it goes down into the depths, and then she kind of just looks down into this gaping chasm with but you can see all these buildings just plummeting away down into it. And she just kind of jumps off and goes straight down into it. But then there's other times, like where you see Silco's factory in that third episode in the previous thing, you see that's like, because you see that's where they are, and it explodes and stuff, and then you can see that the corrupt cop guy, Marcus, looking out. It looks like he's sort of over in Piltover somewhere, and he looks out across, so he's above ground, and you can see that building where they are is actually above ground, like across the river sort of thing, before he heads over to get Vi sort of thing. So that's why I've got this sense that, so part of Zorn is this, like you said, the worst dregs of like just the wrong side of the tracks, kind of polluted industrial sort of like just, not great sort of side of the city. And then I think below that is this also like the underground, which is an even worse sort of place as well, sort of thing. So I think there's like two parts of Zorn. It's like there's the sort of top side with all the industrial stuff, and then underneath is like the mines and the sinkhole sort of thing. So anyway, I'm sure that was really interesting for us to delve into for the folks listening. But part of Zorn at least is underground. I think that's the main takeaway. Is some of it's underground, right? So, but that literal underground world, but also like the underground, like the crime world and stuff like that, I thought was really cool. And Tater Tios made a really interesting point before about it was fascinating to see that Silco, like, so we see, okay, this is what Silco said he wanted to do and all this sort of stuff, and we see, obviously he wasn't maybe expecting what happens with the hex tech and all that sort of stuff, and he talks about every time they think they're getting a handle on it, they sort of get left behind sort of thing. But like he sort of has created this world, but then it's interesting seeing he becomes everything that he hated Vander for. Like he's had to sort of make deals, he's had to sort of like to keep things operating, to keep them safe. Like he's actually sort of working in a way, he sets up working with the topsiders and that sort of thing as well. He uses that Marcus guy and that sort of thing as well, and has to sort of like capitalize in his own way on like what the hex tech is bringing in. You can see them like raiding shipments and distributing the shimmer and all that sort of stuff. So that's a really interesting thing too, like seeing how that sort of world plays out. And are they better off or are they worse off? Like, who was right? Was Vander right? Should they have kept things the way that they had with that uneasy alliance with the way that he had going with the top side? Or is Silco's way better, or is it any different at all? Like, is it just been replaced with the same thing sort of thing? So that's really cool. And going back to the visuals, like that. Remember that food stall scene where Vi takes Caitlin down to that food stall, and just like the slop and the visceralness. I really love that. Where she's eating the I don't know what they're eating, like bugs and tentacles and all that sort of stuff. Really cool.
I love fantasy food. I love anything where it's like, this is not set in the real world and they have to make fake food for it. It's just like, show me all of that.
And they do such a good. They don't shy away from it, right? They really like get into like some really wild stuff there, which is cool. And I love the intro of the firelights. That bit where it's like it's right early on, and they're just such a cool faction. Like, and the way they sort of like you just have that close up on the little stopwatch, and then they sort of come out slowly. It's just so menacing and like, whoa, like who are these guys? Like they come out of those pipes. And just they're so cool, like the way they come out, and you're like, whoa, these guys look a bit menacing. And then they kind of like the way he kind of like just sort of slowly like twists his head, and then they just kind of all topple that way, and then like the camera sort of shifts, and then they sort of zoom down, and it's just such a cool intro for them. I loved that. That was like so good.
It was one of the first times that they introduced a new faction to everything, because so far it had been the poor people living in this bad district and the rich people living in this like clean district, and then all of a sudden you have this new group and you're like, oh, we don't know anything about these guys. Like, what's their end game now? That was cool. I love whenever you introduce just a new player to the board.
And they kept them they did a really good job of keeping them for quite a while through this arc, like
Mm-hmm.
a bit sort of like, oh, you don't know, what's their deal, whose side are they on, sort of thing. You get senses of it, like in that first fight, right? They're menacing and they're dangerous, but like the way that they sort of react, the way they sort of like deal, like you do get that sense, okay, these guys aren't the total ruthless bad guys that they could have been made out to be, sort of thing. And of course then it seems like, okay, so these guys are like the Robin Hoods. They're sort of disrupting the drug trade or whatever it is. So like you can say, okay, so their intentions are good, It's really cool. So and my notes here, we sort of touched on it before. My notes for this arc, I've got, the only thing I've written about Jace is such a doofus. So but yeah, and that was pretty tragic how he kicked out Heimerdinger. Like, what do you think of the character of Heimerdinger? I love that little guy. He's so cool.
Oh, he's great. He's like if Yoda and a poodle had a baby. He's just this awesome little dude. I don't know if whatever his species is called, I don't know if they are a staple of the League of Legends game, but man, he's just, it's great to have this character. I love non-human characters. Like, give me more of those. Is he the only main character who's not a human, or am I missing somebody?
I don't know. Well, okay, main character, I would say yes. Let me have a look. Can I see any that I've written down here? Yeah, no, I think he's the only main one, because, like, you see the other sort of characters, and there's on that that council. There's I assume what is some sort of non-human race. The guy that's kind of like in the robotic
and that guy is he's straight out of Star Wars too.
Yeah.
I love that dude. Everybody on the council is so just interesting to look at. The Clockwork Lady there with her big gears, like that can't be comfortable to wear, but she rocks it anyway. But yeah, I love Heimerdinger. I think that, like, I love wise old mentor characters. Like, give me a Mr. Miyagi or a Yoda, and I'm happy as a clam. Like, I could watch characters like that all day long. So I'm looking forward to him getting his, not revenge, because he doesn't seem like that kind of guy, but I'm looking forward to him,
on the upswing,
back,
right?
Not failing anymore, like being back on the rise, and for Jace and everybody else to get their comeuppance. And I think to skip ahead a little bit, I think it's right in season 1, in that final arc, he sort of like runs into, again, beautifully, it's like that whole thing of like, it's the very, like you said, Game of Thronesy, where you've got so many cool characters, that sort of, what do they call it, ensemble cast, and it's really fun, because you're like, oh, what would it be like, if this character ran into this character, what would their interactions be like? And they find a lot of different ways for the different characters that are often quite separate in their storylines, sort of come together, sort of thing. And it's I think he and Echo have run into each other in the 3rd arc, haven't they? Like, Echo, like, is injured in the aftermath of the explosion on the bridge, I think. Is that right? Yes.
And he runs into Heimerdinger, so you know that, okay, that's going to be a pairing, going into the next one, sort of thing. So let's talk about the 3rd arc then. I love mate, we'll come back to it, but just because you were talking about, you love that council, the crew on the council, and in a similar sort of scene, I think it's in the 3rd arc, the Underworld Council, the meeting of the gang bosses, and they're all really, really fun, interesting characters as well. And this is one of the ones where you do kind of fall into the trope of it, because as soon as you see that meeting with all those guys, because they're all talking smack about, oh, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, and you just know they're going to get, like, brought to heel, sort of thing, in a pretty epic way. And it doesn't disappoint as well. I thought that was pretty funny. Sometimes it's satisfying to expect the trope and get it, but as long as it's done well and in fun way, sort of thing. It was pretty good. So
Totally.
so that was pretty cool. Yeah. But that, I think this final arc starts with that bridge. I think
Yes.
the blockade's been put into place either in that episode or in the previous one. I think it might be the previous one. I think that's like you see as part of the final montage. And again, I think I think the montages in this show, they do a really good job of like extending the story forward in a fun way, because you really get into the music of them and stuff like that. But they do a good job of showing that sort of stuff as well. But yeah, I think he sets up the blockade at the end of that, whilst they're probably sort of cutting back and forth between Jinx and Vi, sort of fighting off the firelights and stuff. I think you see that, because I think in this one, Vi and Caitlin they start this arc captured by the firelights.
That's right.
Yeah, and then you get that, and I love that sort of like animation sort of montage with the green, like it's all in green, like with graffiti and stuff. And that song where they're sort of introducing the firelight, like even though they've been in it, like it's kind of like they're playing the firelights theme at the beginning of that one. And it's got them like banging the drum, or it was like, oh, I was like, yeah, I was getting really into it. And then the reveal of, and I forgot about like how impactful this reveal was for me, when you finally, and you might have had clues or hints before, but you finally get the reveal of who the leader of the firelights is. That was really cool. Like, yeah, like I think if I've got two favorite characters, it'd either be Vi or Echo. I think, man, Echo is like he's become such a cool dude. Like when you see him all grown up, you're like, yes, Echo. Like, and I think what's great about that is you've been mulling on how tragic this is, and you see how tragic things have turned out for Vi and Jinx and stuff like that. And not that it hasn't been tragic for Echo as well, but it feels so good with this reveal to see someone who, and not to say that their life didn't turn to shit, because things have been very bad for them, but like he's made the best of a bad situation. He's become a really cool guy. He's set up this awesome place where he's keeping people safe and stuff, and I really like that. It was like you sort of needed it, like as much as I love this show, it's also like it just keeps hitting you, right, with the tragic could have beens and would have beens and stuff like that, and near misses and stuff. And it was cool to see, oh yes, like here's a real hero we can get behind, sort of
exactly
thing.
Yeah, that's an excellent way to bring the character back, because so much happens that when he shows up, I'm like, oh, I forgot about Echo. Yeah, great, he made it out alive. I liked that kid. And then to have him be the kind of person he is, where you're right, he's the archetypal hero, which is something that's missing from this story. He's like a nice spark of hope that the world of Arcane needed, because we've seen now at this point that the Undercity is just terrible and run by awful people. And the Upper City, while it puts on the facade of being a utopia, it's also run by some awful people who just serving no interest but their own. And Heimerdinger seemed like he had good intentions, and he got exiled from that place because good intentions didn't cut it anymore. So it's so fitting that he gets paired up with Echo, because Echo seems to be the only other character we've met who is not self-serving, who wants things to be okay for everyone. And when Heimerdinger and him meet, it's like peanut butter and chocolate. It's like, okay, we both want the same thing. And now that we can put our resources together, we're going to make this happen.
Yeah, that's such a good point. Yeah, because, early on in the show, you're so right. Like, you've got Vi, right, who seems like, hey, she's going to be the hero, right? And in many ways, she is kind of like, like the hero. But circumstance create this character who's got so much emotional trauma and stuff that, like, the guys in the comments have been saying, like, she just very understandably, she makes some really irrational choices. She's also a violent person through just the trauma of her upbringing and this sort of thing. So she's not the traditional what you expect, you're totally selfless, totally always making the right choice, for the right reason sort of character. And you sort of and you could be forgiven for thinking early on when you first sort of meet Jace and stuff that he might be someone who is like that. But yeah, very early on you're disabused of that because you realize he's an absolute doofus who's completely out of his. He's well meaning, but he's completely out of his league, and he just becomes a tool, a part of the problem in that sort of self-serving sort of world. And he's got all these idealistic sort of intentions, but he just sort of and Victor, he's got good intentions as well, but you can see again, because of his backstory and things like that, he's sort of in this. And again, what an amazing, nuanced, amazing character that we haven't even touched on, really, have we? We haven't talked about him at all, just about. But he's got that sort of race against time with his own mortality and that sort of thing, where he wants to sort of like make these changes and make these improvements for the world, but he's kind of like because of the rush and everything, he's kind of like makes sort of bad choices. And like perfect line in the show, what do they say? They say in the pursuit of doing good or doing great or something, we failed to do good, sort of thing. And
right,
so Echo, and I love that you sort of, I didn't sort of think about it, with Heim, like, peanut butter and chocolate, like those are the two, Heimerdinger's got the intentions, and Echo sort of like he's the young and he's got the energy and stuff, like, those two together can, they can be the past and the experience, the wisdom of experience. Heimerdinger tells us he's experienced the world ending cataclysm of whatever magic caused hundreds of years ago, sort of thing. And you've got Echo with the the hope and the youthfulness and stuff, like what can they achieve together, sort of thing. So but spoiler alert, they're not in the next season either. So so it's so good. And that I just, again, it's another one of those scenes, the whole bridge scene, right? It's this culmination of all these things coming together, and it's this kind of woulda, coulda, shoulda, like, oh, what could have been if it kind of, if they'd been able to reason with each other, or this or that, but the thing I love about this scene is just that fight between the two of them, Echo and Jinx. And talk about a character that's like such a major character we haven't really talked a lot about as well. And but that just goes to show the just the depth and the quality of all of the story and the characters, right? But that I just cannot get over how beautiful, it was the perfect coming together of all the things I love about this show. It's like character moments, meeting of two characters, how will they interact, and with their history between each other, the beautifulness of it, the cool setting, the woulda, coulda, shoulda, like the impact of that moment in the storyline, but also like just the cool posing of it, like the music, the music hits in, like when okay, it's on, these guys are going to fight, it kind of like shifts and they kind of recognize each other that they're about to fight, and like the music hits and he starts doing the thing with his stopwatch. So like just such a cool little character moment, cool little I don't know what you call it, like storytelling device that just kind of sets okay, we're going into the battle, sort of thing, a tick, 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 tick thing. And I think that must be a thing in his video game character, because he's always like that whole thing of time, tick, 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 thing is, I think it must be something from the video game that or if not, like it's just such a cool device, right, with him. But like tick, tick, tick. And then as it starts going tick, 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 like she kind of like stands side on and assumes like the gunslinger pose, sort of thing. And it's just such a cool, iconic pose of hers, like tall, lanky, and she's kind of like just kind of holding the gun, kind of like, lackadaisically, and she's kind of like up there. Just so cool, like just perfectly, like it's the coolness of the beat of his, like, nonchalant swinging the thing, and then her like doing that. And then I love that they go into that like flashback of them fighting as kids, and like so the fight plays out in real time, but also like it shows like, oh, these guys just used to be kids and they just used to fight for fun. And and that whole thing, and then it kind of shows how like he kind of almost remembers that fight almost, and like, you know, because in that little fight he gets shot with the paint gun or whatever, and he loses that fight, but then like, so he dodges at the last minute. Like, such a cool fight. Like,
Yeah.
Like,
and talk about using the animation and the poses to really like sell what a character is all about. Like,
right,
I mean, this is the perfect opportunity to talk about Jinx, because she what a great villain she ended up being. I'm not expecting anything. I'm going in this totally blind. I don't know who's what or what's who. And then to watch those first 3 episodes and then come back, and now she is this feared character in the underworld. And the way they animate her, where first of all there's all these things happening in her head, and there's splotches of graffiti for a couple of frames, and then she will be sitting on Silco's desk, and then the next frame she's sitting on Silco, and it's like, how did she get there? And they do such glorious things with her. And when people are writing a character who is, you know, not sane, it's very easy for them to take it too far. And I feel like they never did that with Jinx. They always sorry, go ahead.
No, no, you go. I was just going,
They always show us that yes, she is not healthy mentally, but they make a point of drawing a line and never having her cross it, and always saying, yes, but she's like that for a reason. She is an extremely hurt person, and there is a human being under all this wackiness. And, you know, so many other like lesser characters and lesser pieces of fiction would forget that and just be like, oh, blue, she's nuts. But they did it so well. And somehow, not only is she always sympathetic when you see her, but she's always terrifying. Like, I'm so scared of her. And in that scene where she goes, she talks to the bartender, and she's just chatting with him, and then like she's like, here you go, and she puts like a smoke bomb on his back. Like, I remember watching that scene, and I put myself in the bartender's shoes, because I'm thinking, if I'm him right now, like, I don't really know Jinx. She doesn't know me. I'm not part of, you know, I'm not involved in her fight. We have nothing against each other. But I still feel like I'm not walking out of this bar alive if it's just me and her. So like there's always a threat when she's around. And when she put that thing on the guy's back, I'm like this guy's a civilian. What? And then it just turned out to be a smoke bomb. But still, I'm like, wow, that could have gone way worse. So they struck gold with her in a way that just I haven't seen a villain done that well in a really long time.
Yeah, and you know, like, I don't profess to know, you know, all the ins and outs of what makes good. You know, it almost sounds a bad thing to say, but like a good depiction of like mental illness and that sort of thing. But it just feels like they, like you said, they nailed it, and it feels like they sort of, you know, and again, I'm not speaking from that perspective, so I don't want to speak on their behalf, but like I sort of feel like they did it respectfully by trying to sort of, you know, always sort of show, not crossing that line, show the reason behind it. She's like sympathetic. I'm always watching her, and it's like you said, you never know what she's going to do, right? You never know, is she like, because so many times like she'll just do a smoke bomb, or so many times she'll actually just shoot someone dead, like, and you're like, oh, wait, are they dead? Oh man, she actually killed that girl, you know, like or you know, those bombs blew up and they actually killed those soldiers and stuff, and the enforcers, and so it's one of those things. I'm always watching her, and like I'm always torn between that thing of she's like, I'm like, oh, I've got to remember she's sympathetic, like, oh, you know, she's so damaged and this and that, but then also like I also am like, but no, but like she's killing people, like, and for no good reason, you know, like she's just murdering people, and like that's not, you can't just be like, oh well, she had a tough upbringing, she's murdered, you know. So I feel like like she's such a great villain, because she's so dynamic in those two senses, like that sort of like I war with myself, like, do I feel sorry for her, or do I not, or do I sort of just somewhere sit in the middle where I feel sorry for her, but I also like loathe her actions and that sort of thing. And yes, it's a real, it makes you sort of have that conversation with yourself, you know, like where do you sit, sort of thing. And she's such a, and she, like you said, she's so menacing. Her presence is even just felt with like where you'll be in a location and you'll just see her graffiti, or like a light will change and you'll see her graffiti change up, and she's not there, but just the the fact that she's been there is like menacing, you know, like it's like,
Yes.
oh, like, you know, or is she going to pop out of the shadows at any moment? Like, yeah, she looms large. Like there's so many, I think, you know, there's so many great characters, but a few of them just loom, like she looms large in this whole world, right? Like she's almost like becomes like this like Batman, like, you know, like if you know, like she becomes this just folklore figure in this society where everyone kind of knows what that means, you know, and what you, if you see that graffiti, it's like, whoa, watch out, sort of thing.
Yeah.
And like I feel like Vander looms large in this world, right? In what he meant for the history of this, you know, in terms of history, as in like the early part of this story. I think, and so many things like refer back to him, and people are remembering the time with him, and that sort of thing. So I think he looms large in the history of this world, and I think she just looms large, is just ever present in this world. And even though she doesn't, you know, necessarily interact with a lot of, it's sort of an interesting way, like she does, like she interacts with the hex stuff and she's like trying to work on solving it and stuff like that, but like she's not sort of going around driving things forcefully with this like mission of hers. Like she just kind of is just doing things, but she's just everywhere. She's a really interesting character like that. You know, because like, you know, Silco, you could argue is the big bad, right? Like because he seems like he's got a plan and he's like moving things in motion and everything is him getting things together. But like she is this just villain to everything. She just is this threat to everything,
Yeah.
the status quo of what's going on. Yeah. Yeah, and it's such an interesting story in that she's this villain of the story, but she's also the goal of the story. Like in a lot of the ways, if you're viewing Vi as like your main protagonist, the one that you're rooting for the most, like she's the goal. Like getting back Powder is the goal, and that's that makes her a really interesting character too. You know, especially for someone that you are warring between loathing and feeling so sorry for. Yeah, such a great character. Yeah. What else do we say about this third arc? Yeah, Echo. Yeah, go ahead.
I think the ending of it was beautiful and emotional and everything it needed to be, with the dinner, the crazy dinner macabre that she sets up.
Oh yeah, the Mad Hatter's kind of tea party.
Yeah, where she takes out Silco, and then the whole idea of her choosing the chair with Jinx on it over choosing the chair with Powder on it. Like, come on, that's just beautiful. That to me was worth the 9 episodes of build-up.
Yeah, and like and everything in that, like just it totally, that macabre sort of dinner party sort of thing totally fit her character. It was like totally a setting for it's the only place this like could have been, right? Like it was such a perfect setting. And then she like just also like the chaotic and sudden way. Like, yes, it was building it. I guess it feels like an always meant to be sort of like this was always where it was going, but also like it was such a chaotic and sudden way that she takes out Silco. And, you know, again, for a guy with all the plans and everything is like him, you know, working to this, and just to be taken out so randomly, in a sense. And especially like touching on him, like going back even sort of earlier than that particular scene, but like how ironic and you know what Teos was referring to before about you know, his world and his plans, what he'd created, and then to see him almost get everything that he wanted, and you never you know, you're still not quite sure what would he have chosen, sort of thing, but then he sort of tells you at the end. But like, you know, he gets, like, they were going to give him everything he wanted. You know, they were going to give him well, I don't know if it was, I forget, autonomy or like a seat at the table or whatever he had asked for, like independence and stuff. You know, they were so sort of cowed by his potential, and all he had to do was give up Jinx. I think is that what it was, sort of thing. And so that, you know, that, what a beautiful, like, whoa, what's going to happen sort of thing for his whole storyline to come to that moment sort of thing was great. And then that set up such a interesting just bit of the puzzle of that last scene, you know, like the Vi and Caitlyn and their relationship, Vi and finally being with Powder and Jinx, and almost sort of getting her to that point, and you know, all of that was just great. And then I do feel like, because the thing is, like, I remember really, really loving this series and really enjoying it, but I do remember by the time this could just be because of the amount of time that went past, but the time that went past when season 2 sort of like was announced and stuff, I was like, oh yeah, that show. Because like I said, I remembered the stuff about Vi and the kids and how impactful that was on me, but I sort of forgot how this ended. And I think it's because it's sort of the way they do it, and again, it's like, oh, so close, like, you know, they'd all voted for peace or whatever, and she just fires that rocket in, and I think from memory the rocket goes in and that's it, like it just cuts to black and that's it, you don't see anything more. Is that right? And so just the cliff, that, like, the fact that the whole thing of this perfect story and everything just ends on this like complete cliffhanger kind of was like, so I don't know how you're feeling, but like I was just like, and they don't do it in the way that, like, you know, in the season 3, sorry, the first arc one, where they sort of have the little monkey bomb and it goes boom and you see the impact, boom and you see a bigger impact, and boom and you see, like, you don't know any impact, it's just bam, the rocket goes in, what's going to happen, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know, I think that's it. I think I can't remember if there's anything more than that, but I remember sort of being like, oh, like, what? And then there was no promise that anything else was coming, right? It was just
right, because it's Netflix, they do their own thing.
Yeah. So I think I kind of like had to just kind of like shrug off that, you know what I mean? I had to sort of like, well, I don't want to be sitting here waiting and waiting and waiting. So I think that because of when it aired, when I watched it and stuff like that, the fact that it was such a like cold cliffhanger, like what's going to happen, I think kind of made me sort of purposely like try and wipe it, because I just,
oh wow,
like, you know what I mean? Like I can't, what are we? So and then to not have it for another 3 years was interesting. But I wanted to get your take on that ending, like the way it all sort of ends there. Like, actually, you know, before we do that, sorry, because I think that will probably lead into us talking about maybe your predictions, right?
Yes.
Potentially. So I just also wanted to mention, because, you know, one of the things we probably haven't talked about a lot is that the world kind of expands a little bit in this last, because you get characters referring to the larger world, right? And I think we meet the Mel's, who's a very cool character as well. Again, we haven't mentioned her, and I guess she's not as exciting, right? Depending on what you're into, right? But she's not as exciting as a character because her world is the world of political intrigue and conversations and deals and that sort of stuff. So there's not as many epic sort of moments and stuff that happen with her. But I really like they keep it, you know, she feels like a very realistic character in this world. She feels like she acts like the guys have been saying, these characters sort of like act realistically, maybe not always rationally, but the story is always served well by how these characters, you know, you never left frustrated going, like, that's not a realistic interaction, they wouldn't have said that, or they, you know. So she's really cool. But you get to meet her mother, I think, and she comes in from this other nation sort of thing, and you get to see her backstory, and she's a really cool character as well. This Ambessa, I think her name is, and she's got that Zangief bodyguard.
Yeah.
Like she's really cool as well. And so there's not much. I mean, you could say quite a bit happens with her in this season, but like, yeah, like she's I think that's an interesting. I wanted just to sort of mention her, just to sort of maybe if you had any thoughts on her or where that's going or that sort of stuff, or is there anything else you wanted to talk about with this final arc, I guess, before getting into your predictions?
No, nothing really left about the third arc. In terms of Mel's mom, I think, yeah, she was a cool addition. She's definitely there to be more prominent next time. And meeting her is interesting because as soon as you meet her, you see what kind of person she is, and it makes you second guess your judgment of Mel. And you're like, oh, is Mel really like a conniving jerk, or is she only doing this because of the way she was taught to behave? Because like her mom's not winning any friendly competitions anytime soon. So right. it really kind of pivots things and makes you second guess your first impressions of people, which is great.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's. Well, I hope that's been fun for you guys, and thanks for the folks that have sort of stuck with this. And I understand, obviously, if you got to go here and there and that sort of stuff as well. And if you've been watching this afterwards, hopefully we've kept your interest and have made some hopefully some interesting points and interesting discussion points and that sort of thing as well, or maybe inspired you to watch the show, because it's boy, it's fantastic. And the showrunners do a much better job of crafting a fantastic show than maybe we've been able to articulate. But I think I feel like with Andrew and Tater Teos and Sin, they've filled the gap for me. But what about predictions? What are you? So do you have a number of predictions? Like, do you have a top 3, or do you have 5? Like, do you have?
I have 3.
Number 3. All right, so three predictions.
And so my first one, I'll start with one that's less of a prediction and more of a, I want to see this because it's the thing that's missing for me, right? It's sort of the only real qualm I would say I have is right now, it feels like every time we see technology / magic in the world of Arcane, the end result is always just thing goes boom. So I want to see a zoom out on the world and how it works. And if that means, let's see some other cities and other parts of the world, fantastic. But like also the idea that this hex tech and all these good things that Jason's able to do with it, let's see more of that in action. Because right now everything is just like, oh, that's a cool thing that Jinx made. What's it going to do? Oh, it blows up. Okay. Oh, those green fireflies are awesome. What do they do? Oh, they blow up. Okay. Yeah. Oh, all right. That hex ball that Victor's working on. What does that? Oh, it blows people up. Okay. So I want to start seeing what magic can do. Like besides that, to just really flesh out how grand this world is. Just to see some variety in the supernatural / technological parts of Arcane.
I should probably write this down so I can remember the things that you predicted or asked for, so I can, we can talk about them in the next.
Yes.
Want to see more of what magic can do. All right, cool. All right.
Yeah, I hope season 2.
That's good.
I hope it zooms out on that in that regard, and seeing some other places in the world would be nice. So the other 2 predictions there are 2 things that definitely, if the writing torch had been passed to me and they're like, okay, Andrew, it's your job now to wrap this up. This is just what I would do because it just makes the most sense to me. So what I feel like is going to happen is, so prediction number 2, at the end of it all. Oh, what's Sin?
I was just saying goodbye to Sin. I think Sin's. I think it's like 2:45 a.m. So
go to bed, Sin. Yeah, I hope you enjoy the show if you get to see it. So prediction number 2 for me would be that at the end of it all, if we are getting a happy ending for the story, which we might not necessarily get, but the happiest possible ending for everybody in this world is that spot of supreme authority that Heimerdinger once had. Echo has to sit in that chair.
Okay.
Echo needs to be the one making decisions for the good of Piltover. At least that's where I would put him at the end of it all. And Heimerdinger, as his buddy, can now kind of get him there and help him. Like you said, he's the old, so he's not necessarily going to go back and take his power, but he's going to put the power in the hands of somebody that he can help guide. And then for my final prediction, in terms of the sisters, the most poetic way I could think of tying a bow on them is Jinx. How do I word this? Whatever the problem is, whatever the catastrophe is at the climax of season 2, this time Jinx successfully saves her friends. And that helps heal her. And Vi would probably end up dying to save her. Like, this time I'm going to, help my sister, and I'm not going to leave her behind, even if it's at the cost of my own life.
Awesome. All right.
That's where I would go with this story. And you have a great poker face going on right now. I'm glad that you're not giving anything away.
It helped that I was like writing down, so I was like, so it was keeping my mouth like that. So okay, we'll we can revisit that, and we'll see how close those got, and whether you get your wish as well. I think talking about I think when you said qualms, the only I had 1.5 qualms. The half qualm is I feel like, I was saying, like, everything kind of makes sense. That they've taken this world that is essentially just these random characters who were given cool, aesthetic looks and powers and stuff, chucked into this world originally, and then a story was made for them or whatever. But they've made this really amazing, fully realized world that feels so lived in, and everything is, and the way that their storylines bring them all together in such natural ways, in such awesome ways that explore those issues, that Tater Teos was talking about, deconstructing violence and what was that? I'm going to make it sound corruption and what was it? Is a commentary on the cycles of violence, how all that sort of stuff, like. Such an amazing job with the source material that it originally came from, and obviously a lot of these main characters, and even some of the side characters, are characters from the game. There's like 160 something characters or whatever in this game, right, that you can pick from, and so and so Caitlin, like in the game, she's this like sharpshooter sniper character sort of thing. So that's why she's in the army with the gun and all that sort of stuff. And Jinx is like a person with like big boxing gloves, sort of steampunk gloves or whatever. So it kind of all makes sense, and I kind of liked the way they came up with, like, these are mining gloves, and you saw that the actual miners did have those like real ramshackle mining gloves originally, like in Vander's day, and so these hex gloves are like even better sort of thing. And but I just feel like the only thing is Jace, like, so Jace and Jace's storyline and his character and everything, it just kind of feels like they sort of went, all right, now, like, so Jace in the video game is this guy with a big giant hammer, right?
Oh.
I assume, because that's, so it kind of feels like they were like, oh, we've got to like somehow get Jace to the point where he has a big giant future hammer for some reason, even though he's like this guy that's up in he's not really dealing with that. So like it kind of felt like where he just builds himself a giant hammer and decides to go lead the army himself. Like it just didn't feel like a really believable, like, why? Okay, I get that he wants to do things and he wants to sort of make a difference, but it just didn't sort of seem to make sense for his character, who's an inventor essentially, to go, well, you know what, I'm actually going to lead the troops and I'm going to build myself this giant hammer to, like, it's like, I don't know. It just felt a bit funny. Like, I guess the hammer was supposed to be a mining hammer or something. I don't know. But like, that just felt a bit funny, him going and doing that towards the end of that season sort of thing. It just sort of felt like they had to, like, oh, quick, we've got to have him have a fight.
Yeah.
Whereas, in the way that they crafted the story, like they didn't have, correct me if I'm wrong, but they didn't really have Silco. Maybe Silco isn't a game character, maybe that's why, but they didn't have Silco actually go out and get involved in a fight, because his character was the mob boss who is in the shadows and he commands the troops, right? So he didn't need to be in a fight. And it's kind of the same with Jace. I like it, it just kind of felt like they chucked him in because you need the character with the big hammer to have a fight, sort of thing. Anyway, but that, but it was a cool fight anyway, and so that was my little half thingy. But the other one was the one cringe moment in the whole show I felt was when they felt they had to have the band. I think it's Imagine Dragons. Have a cameo in that like montage where they're going through the Undercity, and like for some reason Imagine Dragons are in there like playing guitar in the background and stuff. And
I forgot about that.
That just, it was like, I guess if they, hats off to them. That I do really like the intro and their music, and just the way, I think I really like the way that like the drop in that intro music. I think it's quite good, but it just felt a bit like, oh, that was a bit unnecessary, but it's all right. I guess if you're a big Imagine Dragons fan, it was cool, and it would have been fun for them to do, sort of thing. So I can get behind it. So that's cool. But well, we should probably wrap things up, I guess. And we're coming in at 2 hours. That's a nice bow on it, sort of thing. So before we go, I thought we may as well talk about what have you got coming up. So Andrew Fantasia, YouTube extraordinaire, author as well. So what things have you got in the fire that the folks at home might want to know about?
Well, if those folks at home are Marvel United fans, which they probably are if they're watching,
if they're watching much,
they can see me on the Digital Charcuterie channel, where I'm doing a few gameplay things once a month, just some holiday ones. We just did the Thanksgiving one, and the Christmas one is coming up, and I think you're gonna like the theme of the Christmas one. I think you're gonna.
Awesome! All right. When you said you were gonna do themes, I'm like, oh, that's gonna be good. I'm gonna enjoy. Yeah, seeing that. That's cool.
Yeah, this one was fun to pick out. And then we're doing deep dives into every box. And we're giving every expansion box and core box too, and stretch goals, everything. Every box is getting awarded a point system for what you're getting inside it, to see if, for people who don't have the game, because it's so expensive on the secondary market, to see if it's actually worth the money that you're going to be forking over. Because so many people, we're part of the Facebook fan group of the game, and so many people are joining that group constantly, like, hey guys, I'm new here to the game. So it's not like the game peaked at its campaign, like there's still people finding it. So I want to make sure those people kind of know what they're getting into, and the madness they're about to the rabbit hole they're about to go down. So those are
that's super helpful, like you're saying, because it's not a game that a lot of the content is, if you're just getting into it, a lot of it isn't just available. It's a lot of it is only available through that secondhand market sort of thing, because of the Kickstarter nature of it and the exclusives and stuff. So I think that's been a really helpful series you're doing with that. So
thank you. Hopefully CMON keeps re-releasing stuff with every campaign, because I'm sure that's a boon to the people who want to get in on the ground floor and they just can't. So that's going on the channel right now on Digital Charcuterie. And then on Amazon, if you're an Amazon user, you can buy my fantasy books, We Were Wizards. They do not have steampunk in them, unfortunately. But there is magic, and there are wizards, and there may be a council or two in the book.
Oh, okay. So, and those ones don't disappear too. They're like the ones I had before.
Yeah, that's right. These ones will stay on no matter what your green screen is doing. So those are on Amazon right now, if you want to check those out. If somebody in your life is a fantasy fan, well, right now I'm sure they're probably drooling over the new Brandon Sanderson book that came out yesterday. But Brandon Sanderson's fine. He's got enough. Let's throw some love to the authors that aren't traditionally published yet.
Yes, that's right. That's right. I don't want to lose any subscribers, so I won't say what I think about some of the stuff I've read of Brandon Sanderson's, but but not being an author myself, I'm no one to talk, but still. Yes. Well, I think, what am I doing? I think basically what I'm trying to do is just every weekend, like if I can, I try to sort of put out a video, and so I'm trying to cycle through homebrew stuff and showing off what the fans are doing, and then like there's so much cool official content to get through as well, trying to show that off as well, so that if you're a fan, if you're not really into homebrew, if you don't really either agree with it or you don't really not interested in it, like hopefully there's enough videos for you with the actual real stuff made by the Andrea and the team. But if you also do like seeing what imaginative things people can come up with, I'm showing that off as well, and trying to get people's contributions out there a little bit more noticeable and that sort of thing as well. So I've just got printed off a bunch of Nelly Nell stuff. So he's so prolific. Sometimes I feel like, oh man, I'm only ever showing Nelly Nell stuff, but his stuff is so prolific. He's
you
just
just
got so much
summoned
out
him
there.
in the comments.
Oh, hey, there he is. Yeah, I want to keep showing it off. Also because his stuff is always gold. He never misses. So I've printed off a bunch of Overwatch stuff. He's got Sentinels of the Multiverse stuff, so I'm showing off that. I just made a video of that sort of stuff, but I want to show off his Overwatch stuff. And I just printed some Naruto. I don't know if it's Naruto or Naruto characters as well, so maybe that'll come up down the track as well. But I finally got the G.I. Joe stuff as well. I've been working on the G.I. Joe stuff. I've printed out just about everything. I'm just waiting on one more character from the Joes who I think is a must. If you're going to do G.I. Joe, you kind of need to include him, and that's Duke. Even though he was kind of not very inspiring to make, because I'm just kind of like, he's just kind of like poster boy. He's not really, he doesn't have a gimmick, right?
Yeah, he's just guy.
Just guy. But I think I've kind of got him, I've got a good idea for him, sort of thing. So I'm just waiting on the last little bit of art for him. So that might hopefully, if it doesn't get sort of delayed, might be out by the end of maybe next week, sort of thing. So and then I'm sort of planning on maybe doing some videos and that sort of stuff. So that should be fun. So yeah, look out if you're interested in G.I. Joe United, Naruto United, Overwatch United, My Hero Academia United. There's tons of different worlds, and also keep an eye on Diversion Architect. He did so much great stuff with he did the animated series campaign. He did he's made a full sort of set of Age of Apocalypse characters as well. And he's doing some Sentinel stuff as well. But what's really exciting is he's commissioned some sculptors, and I think he's got plans for all of those Age of Apocalypse characters to get models, and he's got some really interesting ones done already. And I'm blown away by one of them. I was like, I just didn't think they'd be able to make it physically. But we've seen the 3D render of it. I don't know if hopefully it won't be too difficult to print out, but he's done one for that Abyss character, and that looks really cool as well. So so I'm really excited. That's kind of what I want to see and what I want to do, just going forward is showing off what people are working on and that sort of thing. And I've been sort of toying with the idea of doing like a 12 days of homebrew or something like that, and showing
that's cool,
like a different thing each time. But I never really know when the actual 12 days are. So what day do you start that on? Is it like just literally 12 days before, or was I supposed to start on the December 1st? In which case I've already missed the buff.
I think you're good. I think if you start on the 12th, you're probably
something
good.
like that, and then you finish on like a Christmas Eve or something. But then the problem is I'm not finished school yet too, so I don't know. I've got to be. I'll see how. Maybe I'll just do live streams of it or something each night. That way I don't have to sort of worry about editing and trying to get it ready for the next day and stuff. But anyway, so keep an eye on something like that. That's kind of what I'm looking at doing. But I guess the other big thing we're going to be doing coming up at some point is you're going to be watching season 2. And so look for another awesome thoughtful discussion, deep dive into Arcane season 2 with myself and Andrew at some point. So I don't want to put you on the spot now or anything, but obviously you'll watch that at whatever pace suits your schedule, sort of thing. And so we can't give you a a definite time frame or anything like that, unfortunately, folks. But Andrew will let me know when he's ready, and then we'll have another chat. So yeah, but hopefully this has been enjoyable for you. And if you liked this, if you like that we've branched out and talked about something different, there's all sorts of things we could talk about. I wanted to ask you, have you seen a show called Severance?
Yeah. I got a free trial of Apple, and I just like last month, and I watched it.
Oh,
and
so
my
recently,
free trial is up, so I won't be there for season 2. But
yeah.
What a show!
Wow, right.
Yeah.
So maybe the only thing with Severance is, I mean, it's the sort of show you can't tell, like if you're wanting to recommend it to someone, you cannot say anything about it.
No, you
know,
can't.
like, oh man, but like I'd love to do a chat or something on that, because that is, again, I don't want to say anything about it, but holy moly. Maybe we'll have a quick little chat when we sign off here. But man, amazing show. So but anyway, like, so if if there's anything you'd like us to have a chat about or anything like that, if you've got any good ideas for a get together, let us know, and we can maybe have some chats and stuff. But yeah, anyway, well, yeah, thank you very much, folks. Thanks for coming into the chat. Apologies, I kind of fell off the oh no, I never scrolled back down. Whoops. JF's here as well. Sorry, guys. But yeah, thank you all for visiting and discussing things in the chat and that sort of thing as well. And yeah, I hope you guys are having an enjoyable holiday season. I hope things are going well for you all. And yeah, we'll catch you on the next one. So Maple Monkey out. See you guys.
Bye.
Bye.